In 2026, a single war exposed the richest militaries on Earth as a lie. For years, the world assumed that Gulf wealth meant Gulf strength, that billions spent on weapons must mean genuine power. Then the fighting started, and reality delivered a brutal verdict. Some of the wealthiest nations on the planet had spent decades building armies designed to look powerful, not to win. For years, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman operated on one comfortable assumption: Iran could shout as loud as it wanted. Yemen and Syria could keep collapsing in the background. But a real war, a war that reached their own soil, was simply not going to happen. America would handle the messy parts, and the Gulf could keep building glass towers in the desert and pretending the region's chaos belonged to someone else. Then the United States moved against Iran, and Iran did something the Gulf states had convinced themselves was almost impossible. It hit back, not just at Israel, not just at American bases, but directly at the Gulf itself. Missiles and drones tore into Saudi Arabia's main oil pipeline. Qatar's flagship gas facility, responsible for a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas, came under direct threat. Emirati cities, the same cities that had spent 20 years selling the world on their safety, were suddenly targets. And the American air defenses stationed there to protect them ran dangerously short on interceptors, almost as if Gulf security had never actually been the priority everyone assumed it was. For the first time in modern history, these nations were forced to ask an uncomfortable question: what exactly have we been paying for all these years? Because here is the twist nobody wants to admit. The weakness of Gulf militaries was never an accident. It was a design choice. Think of each Gulf military like a ceremonial sword mounted on a wall. Beautiful, expensive, completely useless the moment somebody actually needs to swing it. These countries spent billions on advanced fighter jets from Washington and Paris, tanks from Seoul, artillery from London. On paper, it looks like overwhelming firepower. In practice, it was never built to win a war. It was built to send a message. Take Saudi Arabia's rocket artillery. The kingdom operates 4 completely different multiple rocket launch systems. 1 American, 1 Russian, 1 South Korean, 1 Brazilian. That is not a smart military strategy. That is, if anything, a logistical nightmare. But Riyadh was never trying to optimize for combat efficiency. It was trying to keep 4 different global powers happy at once, because every arms deal is really a decades-long relationship, stacked with spare parts, training programs, and political leverage. The Gulf states were not building armies. They were buying insurance policies from every superpower on Earth, hoping they would never need to actually collect. And there was a second, quieter reason these militaries stayed weak: at home. A strong, disciplined army is a threat to any royal family sitting on a throne. So keeping the military underpowered was not a failure, it was a feature. Then 2026 happened, and the bill finally came due. Iran demonstrated something the Gulf states were not remotely ready for: a cost problem they simply cannot win. A single Iranian attack drone cost somewhere in the low 5 figures. A single American Patriot interceptor built to shoot that drone out of the sky costs about $4 million. Fire enough cheap drones had an expensive defense system. For long enough, and eventually, mathematically, something gets through. The Strait of Hormuz turned into an even bigger nightmare. Iran did not need to sink dozens of ships to shut it down. It only needed to make insurers nervous. The moment global shipping companies decided the risk was too high, tankers simply stopped moving, and one of the most important choke points on Earth ground to a halt without Iran firing more than a handful of shots. So now the Gulf states are scrambling, and the response tells you everything about how seriously they are taking this. Saudi Arabia and the UAE carried out secret retaliatory strikes against Iran, the first time either country has ever done so. Kuwait and Bahrain shook their intelligence services awake and started hunting down Iranian-backed cells, hiding inside their own borders. Riyadh and Abu Dhabi signed defense pacts with Ukraine, importing something the West somehow forgot to sell them: cheap, effective drone interceptor technology, along with the Ukrainian soldiers who know how to use it. But rebuilding real military power is not simple, because the Gulf states have a problem money cannot instantly solve: population. In the UAE, only about 12% of the 12 million people living there are actual citizens. Qatar looks almost identical. These countries do not have nearly enough of their own people willing to fill the ranks of a real fighting force. Their answer? The oldest solution in the world for rich nations without enough soldiers: mercenaries, private contractors from Latin America and Africa, veteran officers from the US and Europe drawn in with lucrative contracts, and soon, potentially, tens of thousands of battle-hardened Ukrainian veterans, exactly the kind of drone and air defense specialists the Gulf desperately needs once that war eventually winds down. Even the low-level threats have new solutions now. Modern warfare does not always require a soldier willing to die. It increasingly just requires someone sitting in an apartment, flying a drone from hundreds of miles away. No physical requirements, no risk to their own life, just a joystick and a screen. For nations with plenty of money but not enough citizens willing to serve, that shift might be the most important lifeline of all. So the Gulf states are left facing a brutal truth. For decades, buying weapons was a diplomatic performance, a way of paying tribute to every major power on Earth at once. Now, for the first time, those weapons might actually need to work. And what happens next depends entirely on whether these nations can turn decades of expensive theater into something that can survive real contact with an enemy. Because the age where money alone could buy safety in the Gulf, that age is officially over.